Hello and welcome to the Monroe Method Clancast. I am Jason Monroe and this is episode 80. I like it when we get to these ending in zeros numbers as we rack up these tens. It feels like a little bit of a milestone. Now, pardon my deeper, croakier voice today. My son brought something home from school. He's been coughing for the last couple of weeks and it has inevitably finally caught up with me right before I'm heading out to the boxing at the weekend down in Leeds. But hey ho, I mean, it's just how these things go every single time. So I will keep my throat lubricated throughout this, so hopefully it won't affect your ears too much. Today, so I've just recorded a podcast with someone else, and it kind of motivated me just to kind of, well, everything's set up and the camera's set up and all that, to just jump straight on and record this one. I did a post on Instagram yesterday talking about a client of mine who had an issue that many people will probably be able to relate to. I'm just getting the Instagram post up so that I can quote the exact figures to you. Something that many of you will think, and like I have heard this a lot of times, as you can imagine. So this particular person, I'm going to call her Emma just to protect her identity. She's a private client of mine. She said she was rather frustrated, and she said, "I just want to meet my friends for a coffee and cake without it affecting my weight." Now, you probably have your own version of this, right? You just want to be able to go out for a meal. You just want to be able to have a takeaway. You just want to be able to have some chocolate. You want to just be able to eat some cake without it immediately leading to weight gain. Now, deep down, you know that's not happening, right? That's not how it works. Cake does not make you gain weight. Takeaways do not make you gain weight. Eating out doesn't make you gain weight, right? None of this stuff is making you gain weight. It is, as I would like to think most people know by now, the kind of consistent overconsumption of calories, right? It's not the cake, it's not the takeaways, it's not this or that. It is the bigger picture, the overall picture. To help you understand that better, I am going to throw some numbers at you, okay? So listen very carefully. You don't need to know the specific numbers, but it will help kind of paint the picture, right? So let's talk about Emma. Emma loved coffee and cake dates. But she was worried that this was one. So, just to give you some background, inside the Monroe Method, when people come and join us for the first time, they work through the kind of initial 7 days. So you work through a 14-day course, basically. That's your start point. You go to Slimming World, you get handed a big book. You come to the Monroe Method, you work through a 14-day course. 5 to 10 minutes a day on average. Watch a video. Sometimes there's a little homework task. Sometimes I'll ask you to go listen to a podcast episode. 5 to 10 minutes a day mostly. And this is us getting you into the right frame of mind, working on your mindset, and building you up to getting started. So you do not come in, get calories, and just start losing weight straight away, right? There's a kind of process initially for the first 5 days. On day 7, we'll calculate your calories and macros. And you'll do that by filling in a template, and then we'll do the stuff at our site. Within that template, within that form, one of the questions is, and this is intentional, right? I want the person to tell me in their own words where they think their weight gain has come from. So it's, what do you think your biggest challenges are when it comes to your weight? Sometimes, I mean, it's a very eye-opening question, because sometimes people are completely aware of the issues, and that's great because they know what the issue is. They're just not doing anything about it. And that's the thing that they need help with. Some people don't know what the issue is, and some people will think the issue is one thing and it's not at all, right? So Emma loves going on coffee and cake dates at Costa with a friend. And she had the belief that these were the reason she wasn't losing weight. These were the things that were sabotaging her weight loss progress, right? So I have a very logical brain. It's one of the reasons I love being a nutritionist. I love coaching people so much, is because every person is a problem, or every person is multiple problems, and it's my job to help them solve those problems. So I broke this one down to its base level, right? So I asked Emma, first question, how often do you go to Costa? Twice a month, once or twice a month. Me and my friend have this agreement that we're They made this pact a long time ago because they were always trying to make plans and they were never actually meeting up, and they were going 3 to 6 months without seeing each other. So one day they turned around and said, right, let's make a deal. We will meet up once or twice a month. Every month, go to Costa, coffee, cake, catch up. We'll call it the 3 C's. No, we'll call it the 4 C's. Coffee, cake, catch up, Costa. The four C's. I wonder if her friend's called Caroline or something. Then we could call it the 5 C's. Anyway, so right, cool. So of a 31 day month, you have 2 occasions where you are going to go to Costa. Let's just say 2, right? For this, let's lean towards the top end of it. Tell me now, Emma, when you're at Costa, what do you order? Well, I always order a cappuccino, and if they've got it, I'll have a carrot and walnut cake. If not, I'll get something else. I went, right, let's throw some numbers around. Let's call it 200 calories for the cappuccino. Let's call it 500 calories for your slice of carrot and walnut cake. So every time you go to Costa, it's around 700 calories. And you do that twice a month, which is 1,400 calories per month. Now, I don't know what you think of those numbers. Me, I know that's absolutely nothing. You might think that's very high, but let's get into it to explain why this really is a nothing situation. Emma's daily calorie burn is somewhere around 2,200 calories. Now, over a month, let's take that over a 30-day month, Emma burns 66,000 calories per day. Probably not, per day, per month. Forget the exactness of the figures, right? That's not what she's doing every month. But for the sake of an example, on average, we think she burns 2,200. We take that across a 30-day month. All things being equal, she's going to burn 66,000 calories. Now those 66,000 calories, those are also the number of calories required for her to maintain her weight. Now, I've done all the sums. 1,400 calories per month from her 2 coffee and cake dates with her friends accounts for 2% of those calories. So of everything that Emma does in a month, these 2 trips to Costa are taking up just 2%. 2% of her total calories for the month. Now, I'll ask you this question. Do you think that what Emma is doing 2% of the time is the difference between her losing weight or not? Of course not, right? What's having the bigger impact? The 2% or the other 98%? What's deciding her weight here? Sure as shit, it's not the Costa coffee dates. Because 1,400 is a drop in the ocean when you think about burning 66,000 calories in a month. But here's the thing, like that's on paper that all sounds great, right? And it now makes it sound ridiculous. But it didn't stop at Costa, because and this is the kind of constant message that I'm always reinforcing about people's weight, right? This has to do with Emma's mindset. Emma had created this idea that Costa was a treat. It was naughty. It was an indulgence. It was something she enjoyed, but it was also something bad. Emma felt guilty about going to Costa because she felt guilty about having cake. She felt guilty about having a creamy cappuccino. And that guilt, so she went, she had a great time, she caught up with her friend, had her cake, had her coffee. It's all lovely. But then, once the occasion's over, now she's left with her thoughts. Now she's left with her mindset. And those guilty feelings would then lead into a full weekend-long binge afterwards. So she's met this friend at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, and now she's had this cake. She's been thinking about it. She's got some negative thoughts. She attaches negative labels. We've spoken about this in other episodes, positive and negative labeling, how to create a great relationship with food. The kind of core fundamentals of a poor relationship with food is splitting them up into good and bad categories. So because she saw Costa as like a treat type situation, a reward type situation, and cake would be classified on her list of bad foods, of naughty foods, of indulgent foods. Now she feels bad. She feels bad because she thinks she's done something bad. And how the fuck is meeting up with one of your best friends Creating a plan. How many of you have friends that you do not ever see for months and months at a time, and you keep saying, oh, we need to get a catch up, we need to do this, we need to do that, and you don't do it? Actually going through a process and coming up with a way of making sure you do that regularly, that's a great thing. It's not a negative thing. But Emma had this issue with cake. It was on her naughty food list, her bad food list. And now, here she is, after this lovely occasion with her friend, left with these horrible thoughts, left with these horrible feelings, because she had painted cake as a villain, as a bad guy. And you might have heard me say this before, but you will never have a positive experience with a food that you believe to be bad. How are you meant to feel good after eating something you call bad? And remember, one of the reasons that people have these lists of food is to make themselves feel bad. You know, it could have stemmed from the past where you told yourself that cake was the devil, it was terrible, it was the enemy, it was awful. And you've done that intentionally because you're trying to paint it. You're trying to paint such a bad picture of it to put yourself off eating it in the future. If I make this thing sound completely... think about a relationship that you've been in. Most people listening to this are women, right? Think about a relationship you've been in with a guy who was a bit of a dickhead, but you still loved him, you still liked him, whatever. And you break up. And you're thinking about going back with him, but instead you make him sound awful. He's a prick, he's this, he's that, he's selfish. You know, you talk to your friends, you tell your friends how awful he is. And you get this all the time where I've had friends like this who will come and tell you and say, you know, they'll tell you terrible stories about this person because they think that if they make them sound awful enough to you, they won't go back to them. You know, I can't go back with him. I've just told Claire that this guy's an absolute asshole and he did this and did that. What are they going to think when I go back to him? Part of the reason that they do that is to try and put themselves off going back to him. And it's the same when it comes to food, right? If someone has eaten a lot of cake and they now feel horrible after it, they're going to try and make it sound like the worst thing in the world, purely to try and put themselves off going back to it in the future. That's why people make food out to be awful. I've worked with people who have told me sugar is the devil. It's evil. It's a poison. And then come back to me a week later saying, oh my God, I've eaten so many Haribos this weekend. Oh, I thought it was the devil. I thought it was a poison. You know, they say these things to make it sound so awful that they won't want to have it. So anyway, that's part of the reason that people give such horrible labels to certain foods. They are doing it in an effort to try and control their behavior around it. But all they do in the long run, because that person loves cake, they love chocolate, they love whatever it is they're trying to make sound terrible. You know, you love that thing. You're going to have it in the future. And when you do have it in the future, how are you going to feel after you've made it out to be the worst thing in the world? So you will never have a positive experience eating a food that you label negatively. You will never have a good experience with a food that you think is bad, right? If you think something bad, how are you going to feel after you eat it? Bad. And that was the problem with Emma. She thought cake was a bad food, naughty, etc. But she still loved it, especially her favorite cake from Costa. And it should have been a positive experience, like an individual occasion, 700 calories. So what? She didn't have any breakfast. She went to Costa. She had 700 calories of cakes and coffee. She still needs 1,500 calories for the rest of the day. That could be a 600 calorie lunch and 1,000 calorie. No, what did I say? 7? I said 15. That could be a 600 calorie lunch and a 900 calorie dinner. Could have been a perfectly normal day, but it's not. Because Emma now feels bad about having that cake. And that 700 calorie Costa has now turned in to a 6,000 calorie weekend of binge eating, of overeating. So what's happened now? Something that should only have been contributing 2% to her monthly calories, because of her mindset, she has now taken that from being a 700 calorie occasion to a 6,000 calorie occasion because of the way she reacts to how she feels. Because now she's got this idea, well, I've already been bad, I've already had that, might as well just keep it going. Might as well have a McDonald's for lunch. Might as well get a takeaway for dinner. Might as well have a drink tonight. Might as well sit in front of the TV tomorrow and eat snacks all day. All because of this decision that should have been a perfectly normal decision. A thing that people do most days that visit Costa. But she's turned it into something that it didn't need to be. And now that this thing has grown from a positive 700 calorie occasion, it's now become a negative 6,000 calorie occasion. So the trip to Costa has went from being, something that contributes 2% to be something that contributes 18%. Now it's a problem. But Costa isn't to blame because Costa didn't do anything. This is everything, and everything within this has to do with Emily's mindset, the way that she thinks, feels, and then acts and reacts to her thoughts and her feelings. So Costa wasn't the issue. The issue was Emma's mindset. Emma's mindset took it from 2%, added 16% onto it, and made it 18%. And now we can see why Emma thinks it's influencing her weight loss and it's sabotaging her weight loss efforts. Because she knows what Costa means, because she knows that when she goes here, yes, she has a great time catching up with a friend for an hour or two, but she knows what comes after. She knows what that weekend looks like. She does this on Saturday, she does that on Sunday, and then Monday she draws a line and tries to move on from it. And she's putting herself through that once or twice a month, and it ends up she both looks forward to these occasions, but she also doesn't, because she doesn't look forward to what comes afterwards. But all of this has got to do with the way that Emma thinks, and that's why we worked on that thing. To help her overcome this. And, part of that was explaining this to her. Like on my screen, I've worked out all the numbers and I showed her, I said, look, if you went to Costa and just enjoyed your time there and that was it, this is the impact it would have. Do you think that's a big impact? She's like, no, that's nothing. That's nothing when you look at it across a month. I'm like, but look what you're doing afterwards. You're taking what's happening over a 1 or 2 hour period and you're turning it into a 2-day thing. And it's all stemming from this one thing, your relationship with food, the way that you think about this food, the pedestal that you put it on, because you treat it differently to other foods. That's where things start to go tits up with other foods. It's the minute you start treating it differently. You give it a life of its own. Nobody is going out and having weekend apple binges. Do you think if Emma went to Costa and had a banana, she would come home and start having takeaways and eating snacks and throwing the weekend away? Probably not. But because it's cake and she's created something out of cake, she's turned it into a monster, she's given it a life of its own, she's made such a big deal about it, that's why she goes on and reacts like that. People do not have weekend apple binges. People do not eat some blueberries and go, well, I've fucked it now, I might as well eat all this stuff for the rest of the weekend. People don't do that. Why? Because we don't put bananas on a pedestal. We don't put blueberries on a pedestal. We don't put apples on a pedestal. An apple's just an apple. You eat an apple and you get on with your life. We should be able to do the same thing with everything. If you ate a slice of cake, so what? Great, enjoy it, have it. If you eat the slice of cake and feel bad about it and go back and eat the whole cake, that's when it's becoming a problem. Nobody has an apple and then eats the other 5 apples in the pack of 6. It's just not how it works. And it's all down to us. It's all up here in your mind. It's a way that you think and act and treat these foods. You're the one that makes them take on the life of their own like this. So the real culprit here, nothing to do with Costa, nothing to do with cake, nothing to do with coffee, everything to do with the pedestal that Emma puts cake on, the way that makes her feel, and the way that she then reacts to those feelings, those negative thoughts, those negative feelings and emotions, turned what should have been a small positive occasion into a problem, into a bigger problem, because now this 2% is now dominating almost a fifth of her monthly calories because of what it leads to. So that's actually worked out very tidy and taken us up to 20 minutes. We can wrap it up here. So I don't have any overnight solution for you, but I can tell you that the core, the foundation of a positive relationship with food is removing the positive and negative labels. Like you cannot shame yourself into eating differently, because that's what people try to do. That's why you make the ex-boyfriend to sound awful. You're trying to shame yourself into not going back there again. Make them sound really terrible. Tell other people, because that creates some level of accountability. If I go tell everyone that this guy's an absolute dick, then I'm unlikely to go back there, because then I'll look like an idiot. But you do it anyway. And it's the same with food. If I make cake sound so awful to the point where I'm going to hate it, then I'm not going to go back and eat it, am I? Of course you are. Because you love cake. And when you do have it, you're going to feel like an idiot because you've made it out to be terrible, and now you feel terrible. So get rid of this shit. Get rid of this positive and negative labeling. We should be looking to approach food from a point of neutrality, where we look at an apple in the same way that we look at a cake. Now, initially, people panic and they freak out, going, oh no, if I did that, then I would be the size of a house. No, you wouldn't, because do you look at apples and think, I would love to eat 10 of those apples? No, you don't. And that's why I say that. You should be looking at cake in the same way that you look at an apple, in the same way that you look at a tomato. You do not look at that tomato and think, oh God, if I eat one of those tomatoes, I'm going to eat 20 of them. That's the level that we want to get to. We want to be able to look at a cake and say, cool, I'm going to have a slice of that and I'm going to enjoy it. And that's where it comes to an end. The reason you find it difficult to even picture a world where that happens is because of the experiences you've had with cake in the past. But your experiences with cake in the past come from the way that you think about it. So it's not about trying to control yourself, to develop some bottomless pit of willpower, to get better at controlling yourself around these foods. That's not it at all, because that's going to fail every single time. It is all about changing your thoughts and the way that you think about these things. Everything starts with your mindset. It's the reason, and you're the first people I'm telling about this, it's the reason I have got written on my whiteboard next to me, 5-day mindset challenge. I am today, well, maybe not today because I've got a sore throat today, but I am very soon going to build a free 5-day mindset challenge, where I am going to get people to come into my community. I'm going to set up a very specific private space. I'm going to record 5 videos, interactive videos, with little homework tasks, sometimes little podcast episodes to listen to. And it is going to be basically me guiding people through a 5-day process to get you away from what you're thinking just now when it comes to your weight, to thinking in a way that will set you up for success. Now, to be completely open and honest, the whole purpose of it is that I will get people to come and do this thing for free. And by the end of it, they will want to come in and do a 15-day trial, right? That's what I get out of it. So I'm doing it to generate more customers for the Monroe method. But it actually also doubly works to my advantage, because once people have been through that 5-day process, they will be absolutely primed and ready to come and work with me, rather than someone coming in and me having to go through the mindset stuff. They come in already with the right mindset. They're not joining me because they think they're going to yo-yo diet again. They're joining me because we've went through this 5 days. We've established why you've been doing things wrong, why you've been thinking about things wrong. We've got you thinking in a much more positive way. You are now ready to go on an epic weight loss journey. Not only that, you now know what's important. You now know it's not about the number on the scale. You now know what you should be focusing on. And it's going to doubly benefit me, because it means that I'm going to get this stream of people who are in the right space of mind to go through this process and see it through to the end. So I'm very excited about it. Watch out my socials and emails for more details. But the beginning of June, I'm going to launch this ongoing 5-day mindset challenge, to bring people in, let them go through these 5 days, completely transform the way that they think, using things like this 20-minute, well, it's now at 25, but this podcast episode, like thinking like this and helping, because I like to think that when you listen to these, we can't do this because you can't leave comments on them or feedback or anything, but I would like to think that these little bite-sized pieces, these little podcast episodes, act as light bulb moments, little aha moments. So you go, do you know what? You're right. Nobody has weekend apple binges, but why do we do it with cake? But we don't do it with apples. And that's what, it gets your brain starting to think differently. And that's the fundamental thing behind everything when it comes to long-term weight loss, to losing the weight that you want to lose and living at a goal weight. You cannot You cannot live at your goal weight while still thinking the same way you're thinking just now. I could wave a magic wand at you right now, snap you to your goal weight, and you would immediately go on and start gaining weight again because nothing's changed about your thoughts. You're still the same person up here that gained that weight in the first place. If I took your brain and put it in the body of a smaller person, you would start taking that body to a higher weight because you're not changing anything about the way that you think, the way that you eat, the way that you react when you go to Costa and have cake with your friends. You know, these things have to be resolved. They have to be worked on, identified, unpacked, taken to pieces and built back up again so that you can think differently, because you cannot make a long-term meaningful change to your weight without making a meaningful long-term change to the way that you think, because it's your thoughts, your habits, your behaviors, your reactions, your emotions, your relationship with food. It's all of these things that decide what your weight does. So if you want to change your weight for any length of time, these are the things that you need to work on. And that's the purpose of this 5-day mindset challenge, to get people thinking in the right way, to stop thinking about the scales, to stop thinking about the amount of time it's going to take, and to think purely about, okay, I've been yo-yo dieting for 20 years, but the reason for that is not once have I ever started trying to change my thoughts. This 5-day thing has just helped me see where I've been going wrong in the past. I understand what I need to start doing now. Let's have another go at the weight loss thing now that I'm coming at it from the right angle and from the right mindset. Anyway, that's enough from me today. I hope this has been valuable. My voice actually held up all right because I just spoke a little bit quieter. I will catch up with you next time.